Welcome back to the Martial Way, where we go beyond technique and tradition to uncover the deeper stories, philosophies, and transformations that define the martial arts journey. Today's guest is Gene Burke, a third degree black belt in Oyama Karate, an offshoot of Kyokushin, lifelong martial artist, seasoned operations leader, and the author of 3 books on martial arts, leadership, and the inner journey toward personal growth. Gene brings a rare blend of real world leadership and martial arts wisdom, exploring how discipline, physical training, and mental resilience intersect to shape a healthier, more purposeful life. In this conversation, we dive into the healing power of movement, how martial arts pulled Gene out of early adversity, and why embracing failure might just be one of the greatest teachers of all. You'll hear reflections on ego, leadership, mental wellness, and what it really means to carry the dojo with you wherever you go. So let's step on the mat together and listen in, and I hope you enjoy. All right. Okay. Here we are. Sensei Gene. How are you doing?
Very good. Very good. Great to be here.
Here we are. Yeah, so you and I had chatted for a bit. You had reached out and stuff, or back and forth, and you even gave me some suggestions of folks that come on, and I was like, "Why don't you come on?"
I feel well. I mean, some of the folks, I appreciate that. I really do, and I really appreciate being asked and being a guest on your show. As I said, we chatted before. I've been following your work for years, and I know we talked about this, and you're probably gonna roll your eyes at this, but I'm not joking. When you asked me on, I went up to my wife and I'm like, I just got asked to be on the Johnny Carson of Martial Arts podcast. So I'm pretty psyched. But yeah, I hope that wasn't presumptuous of suggesting some folks to come on. But
No, it's awesome. It's awesome, and and as people know it anyway. I mean, I got this. I started the thing pre-pandemic.
right.
And then going through pandemic, a bunch of things, not just the pandemic, like things that happened with me too, that kind of sidelined the whole thing. And so I've been wanting to go back with it and been trying it now. But it's a very different landscape now. And then get a guess. And the other thing I wanted to be clear, and you and I kind of talked offline about this too, like while I talked to some big names in Kyokushin and others, I don't want it just to be like about big names. Like the point of the whole thing was like everybody has a story. I remember one time, long time ago. I think I've even talked about this before. I was out with a friend of mine. We're just sitting we're just sitting at a bar, bar/restaurant place, and there's up at the bar. I still remember like it was yesterday. I have a horrible memory, but I can remember this. Him and I were sitting at the bar. And we're just talking about life and work and what, things like that, just like guys do. And I remember at that time he said to me, sorry, guys, I got a bit of a bit of a cold I'm getting along with. Anyway, he asked me, he's like, if you could do anything, like you could like forget about money and forget about like school and everything. If you could just choose do anything, what would you do? And I remember spontaneously saying to him, like, I would start at one end of this bar and make my way to the other and get everyone's story. Because I feel like everybody has a story that will inspire another person or whatever. And, almost like the chicken soup of the soul type of thing. Like cool. I really, really believe that. So that was the core idea of doing the martial way was like, after doing the blog and stuff was like to get people's story and just about who are martial artists and their martial journey, because it's not all about just in the dojos and in the studios and stuff. It's just about people's life. So yeah, so it's not about famous people or anything. It's just about people. Yeah,
That's awesome. That's cool. That's
so
really
on
cool.
that note, how'd you get started in martial arts? Like, tell us about yourself, Gene. I start right from. Where are you from? Where are you located?
Well, right now I'm in Richmond, Virginia.
Okay,
I'm originally
is that where you're from originally?
originally from Brooklyn. So yeah, that's where.
Wow.
Yeah. So let me tell you, it took a while to. Apparently, I still have an accent. I hear it all
I
the time down
thought
here.
I picked up some of that because I knew you were from Virginia. So I was like, but yeah, something's not clicking here. But now it
Yeah.
makes sense. Now it makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. So originally from Brooklyn, and how I got into the martial arts kind of interesting. So um, it's kind of a weird thing. Like I didn't do it for. It's kind of a weird thing. So I used to bounce for a long time. I didn't do it as my main job, but I had some friends who owned some bars and in Brooklyn and stuff like that. And then I got asked to do a couple other bars. And so one time I was thinking to myself, because obviously sometimes you get into some situations. So I was like, maybe I should try to train in something. And
So
I
before
found
bouncing, you didn't have any like training?
no, I used to lift a lot. I
So
used
you
to be
had size.
yeah, I used to be a lot bigger than I am now. So I used to
Okay.
lift a lot, and you know, and I was very good at talking people down out of situations, and that's why I was asked to work in some different clubs and stuff.
Like just
Um,
de-escalation.
yeah, um, because the fighting is never has good outcomes, whether you win or lose. Um, so I was pretty good at that. Good at the other stuff too, but I was pretty good at that. And then I found uh, Brooklyn Oyama Karate with Shihan Alfred de Grazia, and I had a weird work schedule, and he had morning classes. So that was one of the few places that had adult morning classes at a time that I could go to. And I went there, started training, and then the odd thing was, found the community.
All
Sounds
right.
corny, but
Nah, not corny. We all do it. Yeah.
yeah, and that's really what drew me in. The training, Yama Karate is an offshoot of Kyokushin, obviously. Um, so the training's hard and stuff like that, obviously. But really, the community kind of kept me coming back, and learned a lot of good stuff, and had a lot of fun along the way. Made some great friends, got a lot of bruises, and
So when about how old were you then? Like
so believe it or not, I was probably, let's see, late 20s.
late 20s. Okay.
Late 20s. Yeah, that's when I started training. I
So
used to,
I'm just trying to figure out doing the math here in my head. So that would have been what was that the 70s or 80s?
like about 88
Yeah.
and around that. God willing, another couple of months I'll be turning 66. So I'm an old bugger. But
Yeah, well, I just turned 55, so I hear you. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I'm just trying to. That was an amazing time to live anyway. It was-
yeah, let me
that,
tell
that,
you,
yeah.
it's funny. I look at I think of some of the trainings. We had we had a lot of fun, but we had we had some really, like, you see some of these guys over here. Right, that's Shihan right there in the middle, and some of my other buddies from the school.
Yeah.
Man, we used to have some crazy training stuff that I don't know if you can get away with today.
Th- no, you're probably right. It's interesting. It's funny. It's very different now. Training, not just Gyokushin, but everywhere. Um, I mean, there's some good things. I mean, I think in terms of like the way people train that have gotten smarter in
Yeah,
ways,
yeah,
but yeah, I'm trying to like watch what I'm saying here. It was just yeah, it was grittier, tougher, and also yeah, I even see it like even now, and I've talked about this before. Like even where I train jujitsu and stuff, it was not just jujitsu over there. They do freestyle wrestling and Greco-Roman and all these things. But a lot of the folks, they're a lot of immigrants. So you have people from Dagestan and from Russia and from wherever, and you find parents come there, their kids are like very different
yeah.
and their expectations than Western kids. They want that.
And I don't mean the training the training was fantastic. I'm not saying anything negative about the training. I'm saying what crazy about it was, and when I mean crazy, it really, like, for me personally, it pushed me to limits at times.
Yeah.
I mean, there'd be things I'd be doing. I'm like, oh my gosh, how am I
Yeah.
going to get through this?
Yeah. That's what I mean. It's
Yeah.
exactly what I mean. Yeah.
And then you get through it, and you're like, wow, I actually got, and I feel pretty good about myself getting through that. So, and so I think that's an important lesson that sometimes, you can be pushed. I honestly believe this. I think people never really push to their max, and I don't
Well,
think it's a negative thing
yeah,
always.
I guess that's what I was getting at, right? Like, I think it's good. I think it's good, and it's funny because now people tend to avoid it.
Yeah,
Like and there's a different mentality. Well, I'm going here to pay for classes, and I want to learn the techniques and all this kind of stuff, but I don't want someone pushing me to whatever. It's like that's kind of part of it. That's part of
yeah,
the uh, chiseling you out as a
Oh yeah,
as
we
a
used to
person.
have these. It was on Saturday mornings, and we used to have these. So the dojo was up a flight of stairs, long flight of stairs. Oh my gosh! And it's funny. We all when I haven't seen the guys live for a long time. We speak from time to time.
Mm.
But I mean, we used to go to those trainings, and you would run flights and flights and flights of stairs, and then you'd either spar or do the bag. And I tell you, it was awesome because it really, while you were doing it, you almost went mindless because
Yeah.
you kind of like had to get out of your head
Yeah.
because your mind is telling you, I can't do this, or you got to stop, it's too hard, or whatever. So you actually had to kind of like separate yourself from yourself in a way and kind of go into a different headspace and then complete it. And I tell you, I talked to any of the guys I used to train with, and those are some of our fondest memories of the dojo. Like we think about that like great times, like really, really
Suffering
good,
together.
yeah, really good times, and the community that builds, um, you know, it really is. I used to say this all the time. They're like my second family.
Mm.
They really are. I
Yeah.
haven't seen some of these guys for 20 plus years, and if I saw them in the street, it'd be like yesterday.
Who was the you might have mentioned it earlier, but who was the instructor then? Like when you went in there, who was the teacher?
Shihan Alfred de Grazia.
Okay, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, oh, he's got some funny stories. He was the Brooklyn head branch for World Oyama for Brooklyn, World Oyama Karate.
And I mean, and for folks, obviously, Kyokushin folks know who that is. And I remember, again, like dating myself too. Like one of the big influences for me going into Kyokushin, especially as a kid, is seeing Fighting Black Kings.
Oh
the doc,
yeah,
the
oh
doc,
that's an awesome film. Yeah, I love that.
yeah, that documentary, man, and obviously the Yoma brothers involved in that,
Yeah,
and there you really you saw the way the training was back then too. But it had such a huge influence on me, and unfortunately there was no Kyokushin around me at the
yeah,
time. But yeah, it was. Yeah, so I'm a little bit jealous that you actually got to, because that's kind of the heyday of all this kind of stuff. Well, that was more in the 70s, but moving up into the 80s. I mean, by
yeah.
then they had branched off into their own organization. So did you actually train with the brothers as well?
So I actually got my belt, my black belt from Soshu Shigeru Oyama. So
Wow.
yeah, I had to go into headquarters to take that test.
So
You know,
where was headquarters at, just for people?
that was on, if I remember, it was like Sixth Avenue. I can't think of the side street. It was in
But it was in
Manhattan.
New York.
Oh, it was in Manhattan, yeah, New York
Yeah.
City. Yeah, oh, it was a great dojo. It was huge. And when you would walk in there, it was, and I really, every dojo has like a different energy to it.
Yeah.
You know, the training can be the same, from dojo to dojo, but the energy that you could feel when you went in there, and it went in there, it was like, it was a hard vibe to kind of describe. But Soshu was amazing, obviously, and the people who trained there were just so good. And you would go in there, and you'd always you would always learn something, and you know it was just an awesome experience. It's funny, my black belt, and not diving too deep into the well here, but so
No,
interesting.
dive deep.
Yeah, yeah. So, for my black belt, and I admit this. I mean, I probably didn't do great on my black belt test. The reason being is and this is what's so funny, and this is one of the reasons why I got into the book, one of the books, Dojo of the Mind and stuff like that. So how my mind works anyway, and
Mm.
I see this in other people too. So like when I was bouncing and things like that, something would happen, God forbid, something would happen, and you would react without thinking about it, right? You would just, because you're doing your thing, right? So you got to go deal with it, whatever. But when I was going into like for a belt test or headquarters, my mind would get in the way.
Mm.
And I was never afraid, it's so strange, I was never afraid of getting hurt. I was afraid of embarrassing myself and Shihan.
Yeah.
So I would get so wound up about, um, failing and, looking like, not even really failing, really, just looking like an idiot, that it would almost paralyze me. And I remember during that belt test, I was going through the belt test, and Shihan, well, not Shihan, sorry, Sensei Earl, he was in the back, he was just screaming encouragement and stuff like that. And it's so odd because, Shihan and Alfred could probably give you a different take on it. And I don't think I did really great on the black belt test. I mean, I passed the black belt test, but what was cool about it for me is once it ended, I was like, it was such a strange experience emotionally because um, I got through it and I realized that at least I didn't embarrass myself for my Shihan. And that
Mm.
to me proved that, your mind is so powerful, and it could be used either, to your benefit or to your detriment. And that's really got me down the road of studying more and more about psychology and things like that.
And I want to get to that too, but I want to unpack a little bit more too, though. What was a black belt test like back then? Like, I shouldn't even say back then. What was your black belt test like? Like, what was the expectation? How long were you there? What did you do?
So you would go through all the basics, go through all Kihan, you would do kata, and then you would spar. And usually the black belt test, I was actually, by the time I took my black belt test, I was almost 40 when I took my black belt test. So usually I think they were 10 or 15 fights. I didn't go the full 10 or 15. He stopped it before that. I don't really remember how many fights I had. I had a fair number of fights, but here's another funny story. This is really funny. My
Mm.
wife laughed at this. So across the street there was a restaurant. This is really, it was really, to me it was funny. So we go to a restaurant, and one of the guys I tested with comes up to me, and he goes, "Hey man, I'm really sorry." So my wife goes, and it was, so my wife goes, "Well, what are you sorry about?" So I'm not, and at first I said, "No, it's cool, man. Everything's good, no problem." So my wife goes, "What are you sorry about?" So he goes, "Well, I feel really bad. I thought I broke his nose." So my wife goes, "Well, what were you trying to do?" He goes, "Oh, he goes, just matter of fact." He goes, "Oh, I was just trying to knock him out." So yeah, hit me with a spinning backache to the face. But it was funny. But I mean, that brings back a good memory. But the test, was hard for me. And again, because physically I got down to a really good fighting weight, for me. And I felt physically really good. And getting past that kind of fear of embarrassing myself, or more so, not even myself, embarrassing, Shihan Alfred.
Mhm.
That was a big thing for me.
But you continued on. Like, what rank are you now?
Third Dan.
Yeah, that's what I thought. That's why I introduced you as
Yeah,
sensei.
yeah.
Like, so obviously you kept going though. So like,
Oh yeah.
was there a moment like was there a moment that you realized that this is going to be like a lifelong path? I guess.
It's funny, even long before I tested, once I got involved in it and, trained regularly, I knew that would be something that I would always be interested in, involved in some way.
Mm.
Even if I wasn't, like now, I don't train in a dojo. I actually have a shed in the backyard. I have a heavy bag set up back there. I'll do Kihan, fairly regularly. There's no one, I don't really train with anyone.
Mm.
Um, there's no similar type dojos in the area. And frankly, at this point, I get more out of what I can do by myself, just keeping myself, relatively, still engaged with it, and just trying to
Did
keep the basics down.
Did you ever have any desire to teach or to open your own place or anything?
I think like um, that's good. That's a great question. I think I flirted with the idea a few times, but I just never. I just, especially with work and things like that, I just never positioned myself. Look back on it, I wish I did. But I never really positioned myself to really. I never really looked at it too seriously. Um,
The teaching part of it, you mean, or
yeah, yeah,
do you
um,
mind me asking what do you do for work?
yeah. So I'm an operations manager. I've been doing that for, my gosh, I've been doing that for about 40 years now.
In what field?
So right now I'm working with a HVAC company in Richmond, Howell's Heating and Air.
Okay.
Thumbs
Oh,
up.
okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, but I mean I've been involved. I worked for Canon for a long time as a regional manager, And so I had an opportunity to come down into Virginia probably about 21 years ago now, with
Mm.
the company when I was with Canon. So I took that opportunity and came down because
Was
my wife's mom was down here.
was that a culture shock going from
Oh yeah,
Brooklyn?
oh yeah, oh yeah.
I've spent time in Brooklyn, so I know Virginia. I don't know, but Brooklyn, I know.
This might be inappropriate, but
No,
I'll
it's
tell you.
not.
Well, I'll tell you. So this is pretty funny. So I was in a meeting. I was probably down here about a month or two,
Mm.
and I was in a meeting, and this is it's about 21 years ago. So, and I was representing my company. There was probably about 15 or 20 people in the room. Big, big circular table set up. And so I started speaking, and one of the guys in the meeting said, I didn't understand. I mean, I didn't really understand it. So he said, he stopped the meeting. He was serious, and he goes, "Hey, wait a minute." He's like, "Are you a Yankee?" And I was like, "No, I like the Mets." And man, you could have heard a pin drop in the room. It was, I was like, and that was the first time I was kind of exposed to that. But everyone's really nice down here. But that was the first time. I didn't know what he meant by it, but then I found out after what he meant by it.
Well, I bet you people don't know as they're listening. What did he mean by that?
Well, yeah. So, because you're from you're a Yankee from the North. So, there's a little bit of historical connotation to that. So it was kind of funny.
So,
And
but for people listening that are not American and stuff,
oh yeah,
so this guy goes back to like the Civil War
yeah,
and
yeah,
the North and the South and that whole thing.
yeah.
Yeah.
I was at a barbecue a couple of years after that, and everyone had a couple of beers on them, and this guy came up to me and he asked me, he heard my accent, and
Yeah.
he asked me about the War of Northern Aggression. I'm like, I'm like, what is that? You know what that is? He's like this. He's like, I think he's like, you called it the Civil War. I'm like, oh yeah, yeah. And I just, it's not on my mind, but but again, love everybody down here for everyone in Virginia watching. Love everybody, but that was kind of a cultural shock.
So when you moved down there, so you didn't continue train. I mean, I know you said on your own and that, but you didn't find another dojo or any other.
No, I went around to a couple different schools. I tried a keto for a short period of time. Made some really good friends there. I didn't stay with it.
Why didn't you stay with it?
Um, I think it's a fantastic art, and the people I train with were absolutely fantastic. But I
But
don't
what?
really think it fit kind of my. This may sound odd, but I don't really think it fit kind of like my body type.
No, that's not odd.
Yeah, I had a hard time. Yeah, I had a hard time kind of adapting to it.
Well, it's just okay. Now I just lost my. Are you kidding me? All right, we've been having a bad day of techno. Oh, it's back on now.
Yeah, people
Weird.
create
I
the
don't know what
story
just.
beforehand.
God, it's been a day. I'll tell you. Um, but no, I totally get that. Like, it's yeah, because every style and everything is so different. Like, Aikido is, I guess, um, a softer style, for
Yeah,
lack of a better word. And then
yeah,
you think of like linear karate styles, very hard systems, and then of course there's everything in the middle and beyond. So,
yeah,
is that what you mean? Just
yeah.
the circular soft nature of it?
Yeah, I just didn't, personally, physically, I just didn't really feel like I was adapting to it very well. And that might sound like a cop out, but I didn't really get with I understood it. I thought it was beautiful. And I thought, some of the techniques I thought were phenomenal.
Mm.
But I didn't see what I think the bottom line was, I didn't see myself really doing it like lifeline, like for a
Yeah,
lifetime.
yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, so I kind of disengaged from it.
So what was it then about? Oh, wait, I'll say Kyokushin for lack of a better word, but
Uh,
Oyama karate. What was it about that made you stick with it?
I just, I thought it was direct, there wasn't a lot of fluff to it.
Yeah,
Um, you know, and again, I loved Shihan Al. He was, both as a instructor, and he is still a very dear friend of mine.
yeah.
And the people I met there, can I tell you a funny, tell you another, to me, it's a funny story.
Go
So I
for
had
it.
a friend of mine, and he's a big dude too. He's probably about 6'2", about 240 at the time. and he was a black belt in Taekwondo. And he was, and I was at this time. I mean, I was probably maybe I don't know, maybe like a yellow belt or a green belt or something. I was pretty new into it. So he was like breaking my chops, he's a black belt in Taekwondo, and nothing against the Taekwondo people, everybody love you. But he was breaking my chops about, oh, he's a black belt and, he spars hard and all that stuff. So I said, why don't you come down to my school? So he came down. So, Sensei Earl was there, and Sensei Earl at the time was probably either he was a green belt or he just turned brown belt at the time. And Earl's a pretty big guy, not as big as my friend, but pretty big. And so, Al goes to him, okay, you ready? We're gonna spar. You want to spar? Yeah, we'll spar. And Al tells him, we're full contact. And he's like, oh, I know. Oh my gosh, first shot. I mean, literally the first shot. Earl hits him with a shot to the solar plexus and drops him. Just drops, right? Mm-hmm. So he gets up, he goes, whatever, lucky shot, blah, blah, blah. Second shot, Earl hits him with a low kick, drops him again. And he didn't continue fighting after that. And probably about, I don't know. He didn't continue training in Taekwondo. That's what I would say. But it was an interesting experience for him because he thought he was it. And
the styles, Oyama karate, Kyokushin, any of the full contact karate styles are quite eye opening for people who come in from other systems. I've witnessed that quite a few times myself. Even at my last place, like we would always have Friday nights for us were sparring nights. And that's where we just went at it. And it was quite open to anybody who wanted to come in, and you get a lot of folks come in, try it out, definitely for upper belts. A lot of black belts would come in from Taekwondo systems or whatever. And some of them are quite technical and quite really, really good.
Right.
And you can be very, very good and very technical at something, but when you get hit like full contact with something, it changes you. And it's funny because I've talked about this before. I mean, that was one of the reasons I went into Kyokushin, because I already had Taekwondo was my first martial art, and then I did Kempo and I got a black belt in that, but I never sparred full contact or anything.
No.
So that was one of the things. And again, arcing back to like fighting Black Kings and stuff and seeing all that stuff was really inspiring to me. But I wanted to it wasn't just about like what it felt like to be hit. I want to know what it felt like to hit someone full contact as well, because I never had that experience. Yeah. And it took quite a while, a bunch of things to get used to, just the contact of it, but also the conditioning of, and I don't mean just physical conditioning, the cardio conditioning and that continuous fighting and stuff. It was very, very difficult. All of it was very, very difficult. So again, like you're saying, like no disrespect to people come in from different systems or anything. It's just, it's very, very different when you go full contact.
And it's really funny you say that. What's very interesting that I think people don't often understand is, everyone, actually hitting someone full on.
Yeah.
And actually doing it is, that's something, it's a mental barrier for some folks. And they're not really, it's a different world when someone's, when you have to whack someone and it's full contact. I'll tell you the truth. I mean, Shihan Alfred used to, yell at me all the time and this is, again, to the ladies out there, no disrespect. Just because of the way I was brought up, I had a very hard time. I just went through it anyway. But I mean, if there was a young, woman in front of me fighting,
I know where you're going.
I had a hard time whacking them. I mean,
it's common. Yeah.
Yeah. And who I was fighting, they'd be in front of me, they'd be like, hit me. I'm like, I am hitting you. They're like, no, hit me. So it's just interesting, both giving and taking, it's a different environment. And if people aren't used to doing it, and that's what happened to my friend. And again, no disrespect to anyone in Taekwondo or any other style, but it really is eye-opening. When you get hit with a low kick to your thigh and it's full on, it is life-changing because you're like, oh my gosh. I mean, that wakes you up.
100%. And I've talked about this on my podcast with other folks too. People don't realize what like we call it Gedan Mawashi, but a thigh kick, what it feels like, full contact.
Yeah.
It is. It's if you don't know how to receive it, it's so painful. Obviously, we get used to it in Kyokushin or full contact karate and Muay Thai, folks, of course, as
Yeah,
well.
sure.
But most people do not. And I always talk, I have this story that people have heard me talk about before. I have a story, a friend, Nori, from Japan, who lived with me for a while years ago. And we used to have these. He used to have these culture parties at my place where people come over and they make food from whoever part of the world. They were so cool. It was really cool. Anyway, there was a guy that was kind of making fun, wrapped in quotes, of Nori, a big karate guy. And Nori's really small, super for maybe perhaps not for Japanese, but for an average like Canadian, North American. He was pretty small. He was like 5, I don't know, pretty tiny.
Right.
And so, and it was for Nori, he was just rolling with it, but for me, it was kind of ticking me off. So I was like, why don't you let Nori give you a shot and see how it feels? And so we were kind of egging him on. And granted, Nori had probably had a couple beer at him at that time. And so we let this guy stand there, and Nori gave him a kick to the thigh. And of course, he didn't know how to take it.
Yeah.
And he got kicked, and he went down in just screaming in agony and curled up on the couch and could not walk for the longest time that evening. And
Yeah.
people have no idea how. So it's funny, like even folks say, like in self-defense, I don't know if you kick or whatever. I'm telling you, man, a thigh kick to somebody who doesn't know how to take it is going to be very painful.
And the funny thing is about that, like Sensei Shihan Alfred isn't physically a big guy. You didn't want to
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. It doesn't have to be, right? Like Nori's like
you
5, I don't know,
yeah,
5'4", maybe. I don't know.
you did not want to get hit by him.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, when you're saying about people not understanding of that, if you get for a self-defense situation, if someone low kicks you, in my opinion, I could be wrong, but if someone low kicks you, if someone's coming at you and you hit them with a low kick, uh, that's gonna make them think twice doing anything.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean? They're gonna be like, damn, what was that?
Yeah.
And I'm saying even if they don't go down, a well placed,
Absolutely. And it's
yeah,
not like it's not life threatening. Nothing's
yeah,
gonna happen to them, but
yeah. But it
but
might make them think, maybe I don't want to be doing it.
Gene, can I park this for? I need to pause it just for 1 second.
Sure.
It's been an evening, folks, of technical whatever. So apologies, but will only be 1 second. Apologies, guys. I'm having a technical day. Yeah, gate-ons. People have no idea how painful those things are. When did you? So you alluded to it earlier. You got into writing. When did that happen? Was that something you've always been into writing,
Yeah.
or did something inspire you to take up this?
That's a great question. So no, was never thought about it in the past. Interestingly enough, I think some of the stuff over time, both as an operations manager and just, like I see a lot of younger folks coming into the workforce and stuff. And, I thought about actually, I initially had 2 books. One was Striking Success, and that was about how martial arts can be used for leadership.
Mm,
Because I was dealing with a lot of young managers coming in or people who wanted to be managers.
mm,
And I go back to, I had it's getting better, but I've dealt with insomnia for years. So, one night I'm sitting there, I'm counting the ceilings in the crack again for the, 9,000th time. And I'm thinking to myself, maybe I should actually use this time for something. So I started writing a little bit at night here and there. And that's how the first book came about. And I wrote the first book primarily because I think so many things can be taken from the martial arts that can be applied to leadership.
yeah.
And I saw, just over long periods of time, people that I mentored as an operations manager. I'm happy to say that I've been able over the years to be able to help people to, to get promoted and to move into management roles and stuff like that. But, I thought about things for a while about, how I could help. And help is a strong word. Maybe give some bits of advice to folks maybe when they were coming into the workforce, especially if they wanted to go into management. For me personally, there's 2 types of management, so, I always think of this may sound bizarre, but, I think you you develop people, you manage equipment,
Right.
you know. Uh, I think it's two very, very different things. And I think a lot of managers in business forget that, that people, each person's an individual. They're going to have their own particular path. They're going to have their own life experience. And, you can't treat everyone like it's a hammer, or you can't treat everyone like it's a piece of equipment. If you want people to develop and grow, you need to kind of meet them where they are and help them along the way if you can. So that was the genesis of the first book. And then, I began to think about my journey. And again, with the Dojo of the Mind, it deals with how martial arts can help people, help. And again, always, if I always stress in the book as well, um, absolutely seek professional help if you need it. I think particularly in Western culture, especially for men, it's very difficult to, one, admit that you have a problem maybe, and secondly, to ask for help. But I think like the martial arts or really any sport, or it doesn't even have to be a sport, it has to be something physical. If you get your body, the mind-body connection, which I think we often forget in the West,
Yeah.
sometimes you need to get outside of yourself. So if you're doing something like if you're like this, I mean, if you're in a dojo and whether you're doing kata, whether you're doing Kihan, whether you're doing sparring, especially if you're sparring, if you're standing in front of someone, you're not thinking about how bad your day was yesterday. You're thinking about, well, okay, you're not even really thinking, hopefully. You're reacting to the situation, so you kind of get out of yourself. And I think, the martial arts can be so powerful for people, especially if they have anxiety or depression, all the hormones that come from it, from stressful training, all the positive hormones that can come from it, the goal setting, the great joy that people have when they reach a goal, self-confidence, especially, and it could be, especially I would say young kids coming in or teenagers coming in with not a lot of self-confidence. And you would see over time, you would see them literally change in front of you, that they would come in very shy maybe, and they may always remain to be quiet or whatever. That's not a thing. That's not a negative at all. But you would see that as they were progressing over time, that, they realize that they have a power within themselves, that they can change their lives for the better if they put the effort in to do it, So, that's really where those two books came from. Both were tied to the martial arts, just because I think martial arts, it's been my experience, for many, many years before the martial arts, I lifted for years. I mean, at one point, I did some bodybuilding shows and stuff. I power lifted in college and things. I mean, I was very, very into weightlifting, and that had very positive effects on me too. But there wasn't a community aspect to that.
Good
That was
point.
a singular thing, and it was very, very, very good for me. I mean, I gained a lot of self-confidence and a lot of positive, things that came about just from weightlifting. But it's not the same as being in a community, and I think that's one of the powerful things about martial arts is, as people go through their journey, they're going through with a group of people and they're experiencing the same thing. And I think I think community is very important. I think, we kind of, everyone's in their cell phone today 24/7. And I think that we're kind of losing the connection with people. And I think it's important that if you can, whether it's martial arts or something, go to a CrossFit gym, whatever it might be. Um, One, for the physicality of it, but also if you can get into it with a group of people who are experiencing the same thing and help you along the journey.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And there's so much there we could unpack, but even just that, like me too, like I love the gym. I'm as you a gym rat. I've been in there for years. As a matter of fact, I don't even know as much as people know I love martial arts. It's a pretty weighted balance between how much I just love the gym, but
Yeah.
you're right. And I never really thought about it that now. Just you said it, like it's very different. Like you don't have this sense of it's a very solo thing at the gym. You
Mhm.
might have acquaintances that you chat to, but I'm kind of known at the gym. Apparently I don't look approachable, and I'm really angry looking at the gym. So I don't get a lot of talking at the gym. I'm just going there. I have my goal, and I'm in there, and I'm focused, and I just do it. Um, where yeah whether it was in Kyokushin for years or even now in jiu-jitsu and stuff, like yeah, it's way more of a community, and as much of it is, it's not a team sport per se, but you are there with a team. You are there like to your note, like you are supporting one another and pushing each other on. You get that you're all kind of suffering together
Yeah.
in one way or another, and there's a real camaraderie that's built out of it. Yeah, I definitely, yeah, that's a really, really good point, and I love that, like the yeah, the delineation too between the gym and just and martial arts. But and these books that you're like that they're focused on, are they um like learning manuals for lack of a better word, or like what's the focus of them?
That's a really good point. So I think, like with the one for management, I think it's kind of like a guide. It gives kind of like examples of um, what to look for. Like, if you want to be a good manager, all those things that go with it. You got
Right.
to be everything that goes with that. You got to be trustworthy to your folks. You have to keep your word. Resilience to be able to be agile, all that good stuff. Um,
Extreme
and then with
ownership.
yeah, you have to, and I get that's a great point. I mean, one of the things that I think is a challenge for, people is, and it's hard for some people to do this effectively, but you have to own, if you're, I'll give you an example. Like if something happens to someone on one of my team and something goes wrong, that's my fault. Doesn't matter if I
Yeah.
didn't do it. You have to own it. And so that's kind of the genesis of where that book came. And from the Dojo of the Mind, actually a lot of that came from, uh, when I was growing up. This is gonna sound so goofy, but
Mm-mm.
I don't mean this to become an Oprah episode here, a soap opera episode,
Good
but
for me.
yeah, no, I'm saying, when I was younger, one of the reasons why I got into weightlifting was, and everybody, this happens to everybody. It just affected me maybe differently. I was really, really picked on a lot at school when I was a kid.
Oh yeah.
I was physically really small. I had some really funky skin issues on my face. I was picked on a lot in school, so I started to lift. And I can remember this is actually, it was a very vivid memory for me. There was a turning point in my life when I was kind of like not the outcast, but I mean I didn't have a lot of friends in school. And then one day in wrestling, and this goes back to like thinking about it or just doing it. I was in a gym class one time, and there was a kid in our school that everyone was afraid of, and we had a I don't know why, I don't know if they do this today in gym classes, but we did a wrestling class day. And I never wrestled or anything, but I was lifting now for probably like maybe 6, 7 months. And I just took to it really well. And I really easily beat this kid in wrestling. And he was stunned. And he was, everyone, he was kind of like the Fonzie of the high school. So you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
he was stunned. Everyone was stunned. Um, and then the gym teacher was actually the wrestling coach. And after class, he asked me to join the wrestling team. And to be honest, well, here's the funny thing. So I beat this kid without any training, and then I went to the wrestling team, and I was terrible in wrestling. Because I wasn't I wasn't competitive. Like I didn't have that competitive mindset that I had
Mm.
to go in and win, win, win. But during the class when I was beating this kid Teddy, and I just did it, and I was having fun, and But anyway, that was a turning point. I continued to lift, and then by the time I was a senior in high school, it was how can I say this? It never got physical, but everyone that took joy in picking on me when I was younger in school, we had some conversations, and it was that was nice. Anyway, so that's where I go back to, and then that was kind of where the dojo of the mind came from because I see so many kids today, and a lot of the book is kind of written really for younger folks. Depression and anxiety is so rampant today in the world. And, the martial arts, and again, go back to any physical activity. But, I found for me personally, being in a group setting, being in a community, and all the things that martial arts help you with, that was kind of like the genesis of that book. So it's not really a how-to or anything like that. It's just kind of some stories that I put together and some things to focus on and some examples of how it can help. And how it could benefit someone. And again, it's always really important to get professional help if you're having a real problem. But, sometimes you need something that's not, you need something that you can do outside of that, and I could tell you, like when I was training in the Brooklyn dojo, I mean, I worked some odd hours. I could have had a horrible day at work the night before because I usually worked evenings. So, and this wasn't doing the bouncing thing. This was something else. And, I'd get up in the morning and first off, the first thing was I didn't want to go to class because I had a crap night the night before. So I had to generate discipline to get out of bed and go to class, right? Because I just could have laid in bed until I went to school, until I went to work. And then, when I got to class, first you felt great because you saw people when you walked in, so it made you feel better.
Yeah.
And then once you finished the training, very often after that training, I felt great.
Yeah.
I felt mentally great. I felt, I felt uplifted. And that was kind of a hook for training as well for me, because it just was it was a good outlet. I'll tell you right now, I mean, even now today, my wife, if I have a bad day at work, I have a heavy bag in my shed. My wife will say, before, hey, go hit the bag.
I'm exactly the same. Exactly the same. If I'm having a bad day and my partner, my spouse, she will be like, she'll just tell me to go to the gym or just go to
Yeah,
jiu-jitsu. Like
yeah,
because she knows exactly. I'm
yeah,
going to come home completely different.
yeah.
Yeah,
It's true.
it's wild. And again, I mean, I'm sure a lot of that it's literally just maybe chemical endorphin release and dopamine hits and all that kind of stuff for sure. And I don't know if that's even important, the chemical behind it. It works.
It does.
It
It really
works.
does.
And I don't think it's any coincidence, too, that the greatest philosophers, even in Western philosophy, in our learnings, they all were super physical, and they were wrestlers, they were athletes and stuff, and it's I don't know how many people are aware of that. Like the great minds of Western civilization suffered together, and I think it's a great deal of it too, because with that comes a huge lifting of the mind, a huge. I don't know. I'm struggling to articulate it even, but there's something about, no matter what bad place you're in, or at least for me, if I go in there and grind it out either in a gym or on the mats or doing something, it's wild the effect that it has.
It really is. And I think that's part of the challenge I think today we have, maybe, and I don't mean to be generalizing, but,
Mm.
I think as a culture, we're getting more and more away from physicality,
Oh yeah, 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 yeah.
and that's, I think it's a big problem. I really do.
Did you know there's a decline in testosterone?
Oh yeah.
It's
Oh yeah.
crazy. There's
Yeah.
literally a measurable decline with young folks now with testosterone versus like older generation, including you and
Oh
I,
my
because we're
God.
in a similar generation, and folks
Yeah.
older than us.
Yeah.
Like and pretty dramatic, and they're trying to figure out why that is. I mean, there's different hypotheses, as things from even the foods and stuff, and the additives and plastics and stuff they're getting into their systems, to just being in the whole thing about like hard times create hard men kind of thing. I think it's probably just a mixed bag of all of it, but it's definitely something to it.
No, I absolutely agree with that. I think that, if you think about it, like when I went to school, this is, a long time ago,
Mm.
gym class, even gym class
Yeah.
was tough.
It, it really was. I tried to tell people that too, and I even yeah. I won't go too. Yes, absolutely.
But it's true. And
Yeah,
I don't think, I mean, I haven't, I don't know. I don't think that happens anymore.
yeah.
And I think unless people go out and seek it, like if someone goes out and seeks and seek to be involved in something that's difficult, life today, and I think we tend to forget this in the West. Life today is physically very comfortable. If you look at, like my dad, my mom, they grew up in the Depression,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
and life was tough back then.
Yeah.
And you look at generations before that, nothing was physically easy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's part of the problem that we have. And again, I don't mean to generalize, but as a society, particularly in the West, we're not really used to adversity. And again, everyone's carrying a burden that we don't know about. So I'm not saying that. I'm not saying people have easy lives, but from the comfort level that we have today. I mean, think about it. I mean, even when I was growing up, I mean, this is going to sound so stupid, but I mean, I was the remote control changer in my house. Like we were watching TV. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
I relate to that.
Yeah, you had to get up. Hey, go change the channel.
I relate. Yeah.
I mean, everything was different. So I think it's really important if people can do that, especially for young folks coming up. I encourage everyone to find something that you love that's physical and do it. It doesn't matter really what it is, but I think it's really important to, the mind and the body are intimately connected, and everyone knows this.
100%.
If you physically feel terrible, you're mentally not going to be in a great space. And
100%. And science is backing that up now too. Like I'm such a geek about this stuff, but I mean the studies show it now too. People who stay physically active in that has a profound effect on their mental capabilities as they're getting older as well. And again, I speak for myself. Like I just turned 55 this past week, and you know, and
happy
people
birthday.
will see me. Thanks. And people see me doing some of the things I do, and it's like part of it is like to your point, like sounds weird. Not a self punishment, but I want to make myself. I think it's good. I think it's like all these things that I do, and it could be anything from like the sauna I do, or the cold plunging I do, or the gym I do, or just grinding it out in martial arts or whatever. I think all of that is a part of longevity for me.
Yeah.
In a
No, I
way,
agree.
sure, I think my body kind of falls apart on me in a lot of ways, but I mean that's just wear and tear comes with things. But I think overall, as much as because I have people say that too. Well, man, your back's messed up, or this is messed up and stuff. Like, fair enough. But I'm still way more active than you.
Oh yeah.
I'm still carrying no body fat, and I'm, I'm still doing things. So the trade off, I think, is pretty good.
And it's funny you say that. So, I'll say, so I have some, I have,
Let's see if it pops back on. So I'm having again my day of technical. See, there we go.
there we go. There we go. So, personally, like I have some foot and hip issues, and
Okay,
but I walk every day,
right.
and then we just rescued a puppy from a pound about a month and a half ago.
Oh, that's
So, which is
awesome.
great. Oh, it's great because now I have a real reason to walk. But the funny thing is, I'm like, sometimes folks would ask me, like, literally, if I'm walking, and I'll walk, probably about 4 miles a day, give or take, and probably less than a quarter mile into it, my issues arise with my hip and my foot, right? And it hurts. But you know what? I still do it. And it's kind of a weird thing for me because it's not just a physical thing, it's a mental thing you know what I mean? And I feel good after I do it. Like it hurts. And then ultimately it winds up passing when I'm walking. But there's always a period of time when I'm walking where it physically hurts. Now, there's nothing, it's not like I'm wearing away my hip or anything like that. But for me, it's a mental challenge. Like if every time that happens, I'm like, what? I don't really feel like doing this. But then I was like, you know what? I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
Push through it. And I think that's important for people to sometimes think. I'm not saying, folks, please listen to me, listen to your doctors. But sometimes I think people quit before they should, or give up before they should. And I think they have a lot more. A lot of people have a lot more in them than they realize.
I totally agree. I'm only going to challenge you on one thing.
Yeah.
Folks, listen to your doctors. I don't agree with that at all.
Really?
No, I
No
don't.
kidding.
No, I don't. And people can lambaste me all they want on this. I think most family doctors are full of shit and they don't know much.
Yeah.
Most family doctor, and I mean like general practitioners, and it's no fault of their own. It really isn't. It's become a business. I think people, and I know this firsthand because I'll just say I know firsthand from people who've gone through it and who are doctors and stuff now, so are quite openly admitting this to me. You go through med school. Here's a fun fact for people who may not know. Most doctors, special general practitioners, for all their years of medical, have about 1 to 2 hours of nutritional training. That's it.
Wow.
Um,
That's
And
all
then
scary.
once they get into a practice and a general practitioner, they're a revolving door. So you get paid on how many. I know it's different in the United States than it is Canada here, but either way, doctors get paid, and they get paid on how many patients they see. So it's a revolving door of patients that they get through, and they want to get through so many. And even my own doctor has admitted to this to me. He's like, I don't have time to research. He goes, he comes to me, he'll tell me, he's like, well, you're up on the research, you know the stuff, so tell me.
Wow.
And I'm pretty confident I can go against any general practitioner when it comes to general medical advice and nutrition and biohacking and all that stuff. So I
Wow.
understand what you're saying because you're trying to like, yeah, of course, listen to you. Don't go out and injure yourself and stuff.
Yeah.
But I also tell people do your own research and really, really I think the best doctor you can get is yourself. You have to become your own best doctor, and you have to advocate for yourself, research if you care, and yeah, and I'm sorry to jump on that one just because
No, yeah,
it's a
sure.
thing that everyone says like listen to your doctors, and I'm like
Well,
I don't
it's
know.
also like a legal caveat.
Oh yeah, no, I know. That's what I mean. I understand why people do it, and that's why I'm like, I'll probably get in trouble for saying it. Yeah, because you don't want people to go out there and go, "Well, freaking Gene told me that I could do this. Now I'm going to
Yeah.
sue his ass for."
Yeah, no, I
But
mean, and that's nothing. It's sad we live in a world like that today.
exactly, and it's weird that we have to be careful of
It
that
really is.
kind of nonsense too, and that happens all the time too. Hip
Yeah.
things are funny, man. I was actually I have an injury right now. I always these days now again getting older. There's always something. Tires are falling off, but I had this thing where I thought again doctors. So went to my doctor because it wasn't getting better in my hip, and I was worried I had like again because I'm getting older. Is there something going on degenerative in the hip because I have a lot of degenerative stuff in my spine, and it gets sent to physio and doing a whole bunch of physio, and I told I have a pulled hip flexor or something, so we keep doing physio on it. I'm like, I don't know, man. Like I feel like there's something else, but they're so reluctant to send you in for further tests up here in Canada to go for like because they got to go through phase. They got to go X-ray, then they got to go in for your another scan, and then eventually it takes you months and months and up to a year to get an MRI and stuff. So it takes forever. So eventually, so I'm just doing physio on it, but it's not really getting better. It's actually getting worse. So I went down for a follow up to the Cellular Performance Institute on my spine for the stem cells.
Yeah.
And so while I was down there, I'm like, can I get an MRI done on my hip? Because this thing is bothering me. They're like, yeah, sure. So they did an MRI and they come out and they give me a follow up on my back. They're like, yeah, you have a torn hip labrum in your hip. I'm like,
Wow.
what?
No kidding.
What? And they're
Wow.
like, yeah. And so I told them what I've been doing, and they were like, if you had continued with the physio, you would have needed surgery.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Wow.
So yeah, it was definitely being treated wrong up here. So I have a torn labrum, so they inject it with stem cells, and it's healing up really quickly now. Really good, but yeah, another little thing that just miffed me about again back to
It's
doctors
an amazing story about your stem cell journey.
is
That
crazy. It's
it's
been
amazing.
crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I won't get into it too deep, but people know. I mean, like this arm was gone. It had completely atrophied. I couldn't hold a glass. I couldn't hold a
No.
pen at
Wow.
the end. I couldn't
Yeah.
do anything, and now I have full function
That's
back
awesome.
because of stem cells, and then my lower back and stuff. One part's really bad though. L5S1. There's no disc left. It's bone on bone now,
Wow.
so there's nowhere even to put stem cells in. So I'm actually checking out. There's something else I'm checking out. So I love experimenting on myself. So I have something in my back
Hey, look,
pocket.
you know what? I mean, think about it. I mean, you had the courage to go outside of the norm, uh, the normal pathway, and you changed your life by doing that.
It's yeah, it's hilarious. I don't
You know,
know
I
if
mean,
it's.
it goes back to your point about not listening to doctors. And again, folks, listen to your doctor.
But
What I was saying,
that's a good point though, because even that one. So when I lost my arm, they wanted to open up my throat, remove my windpipe, go in through, open up my chest, and go in and put to remove and replace 2 levels of my spine with artificial disc. And I would have been the only Canadian with a double level artificial disc. And I was like,
wow,
no, I'm going to continue research, and that's when I found the stem cells and all this kind of stuff, and Joe Rogan podcasts, and
yeah,
so I went down there, and I was told the doctors here told me that they scoffed at me they kind of chuckled, said I was wasting my money, all these things, and then again I remember pushing them on it, like, well, tell me. They knew nothing about it. They just knew that it was. So I went and did it. Obviously, it worked, and I come back and I went in. One time I was in having nerve conduction tests done, just to see the nerve roots because they were gone, and I remember the doctor was like looking at the test and he's like, "Oh, I'll be right back," and he comes back with other doctors, and they're all looking at it and they were like, "If we didn't see it ourselves, we wouldn't believe it."
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah. Well, anyway, okay, guys. But yeah, so sorry. I don't mean. God, now I feel bad. Now I feel like I don't want to berate. I'm not berating doctors or anything. I think it's very different than a general practitioner in your they're seeing so many people, and of course, I think they're great. You're sick or whatever. You had the flu, or you think you have pneumonia, or you have something. Of course, you're going to go in, or you have definitely if you have something broken, you're obviously going to go in. But when I think when it comes to overall health and longevity and stuff, you really got to be your own advocate and really do your own research, and that's just my take on it. Anyway, sorry, that's my whole rant. I'm done now. I'm done.
No, I agree.
So what was the biggest challenge though? Turning how can I say, like, turning the martial arts journey into written form, I suppose.
So it's interesting. So one is just putting the thoughts together, and then I had a pretty specific way I did it, and then putting it first, actually, I laid out even before I wrote, the words in the book. I actually wrote out what I wanted to write about. So I wrote about, I literally
like a
wrote
skeleton,
out,
like you mean, or
like I actually wrote down chapters.
right, yeah,
so titles of chapters, and then I kind of developed that. That took a while to go through and kind of figure out what I wanted to focus on and things like that. And then I went back and did chapter by chapter. And then, I would revise some stuff and, go back and, it didn't look right. I've revised the books a couple of times. But that was kind of the process. I never did it before, so I just kind of did it methodically. I didn't really, obviously I'm no Shakespeare, so I'm not.
Did you
not
self-publish?
Yeah, I went through Amazon.
Yeah.
Actually.
What was that like?
And that was interesting in itself. I mean, that's an interesting process in itself.
I've thought about that one myself too, because I thought about doing something. I was curious. Like, it's neat now to talk to someone who's done it. Like, is it like an easy process to?
Yeah, it's not. The setup of it's really, really easy. And here's what's funny. So, and you learn. And this is what I'm saying. It's so great. I've made so many mistakes during this process. I mean,
Well, that's
so
how you
many.
learn.
Yeah, but that's how I learned. So, actually, really, just recently, I just went back into Amazon and it reformatted the books because, and again, you learn. I learned through this. I mean, maybe some people got this up front, but I didn't. So about how you format it, whether it's in Word document or whether it's in PDF and things like that. Because what I found was the first times I was putting it out there, I was doing it in Word. And it was really difficult to, well, at least for me it was really difficult to format it so it would print right in the books.
Right. No, it makes sense.
Yeah, and then and I didn't get that right the first couple of times it came out because I'd buy the book just to see what it looked like.
Mm-hmm, of course.
The first couple that came out, my man, it doesn't look right. And then I finally got down the PDF process. And then once you put it in a PDF and align it right, it transfers so much easier into a book format. So, if you're going to, you have great stories and stuff. If you're going to write something, I absolutely encourage you to use the Amazon platform because what happens is, you kind of set up your whole thing, your accounts and stuff like that. And then what it is they print on demand. So you don't have to buy tons of inventory up front. You don't have to do any of that. Once it's all formatted in their system, once someone buys it, they print it, they ship it, and obviously you get you get paid off that. But
I love it.
Yeah.
I think it's so great. It's also like that's like one of there's lots of negatives, but some of the great things that come from technology and social media and all these things is making people like doing things like that. You can self-publish, you can get your words out there,
Yeah.
and people, you build an audience, and people listen or they read in this case or whatever. And it's much the same thing, like, because I'm sure, because you and I, again, similar age brackets, we grew up, like, at least for me, like, we grew up with like a couple channels on the TV, and people listen
Yeah.
to their NBCs or ABCs or whatever the
Yeah.
case may be. But now, I mean, like, well, like this, like we're doing right now, like podcasts, and just, there's so many avenues now to get information.
Yeah.
And you don't have to be, and again, here's another thing too. Like when I was growing, I was a musician growing up, and the only way to be a like quote unquote professional musician, you got to get signed by a big record label and all this kind of stuff. And it was literally like winning the lottery. But now, not that it's not like winning the lottery, I guess, to get famous, but people coming up and young folks, they have so many different avenues now, and they can publish themselves. They can put their music out themselves, whether it's through
Yeah.
whatever, like whatever out there. I don't even know what musicians use anymore. But there's so many things you can go through: YouTube, Spotify, whatever the case may be. And if people like it, they'll listen and they'll go from there. And I love that. It puts people, just the average person, into so much more control, and not having
Oh, I
to
agree.
rely on these big organizations and companies and stuff.
Well, I can tell you, if I didn't find out about, so two things really. If I didn't find out about how you could self-publish, I probably never would have went down that route.
Right.
And then one
Yeah.
of the things, I didn't have an editor, and so I used Chat GPT
Hmm.
I would write it, and then I put it in there, and I'd be like, I'd check for grammar, do all that stuff. So for me, I used the technology that was available. I used Amazon to be able to self-publish and use their process, and not have to spend a lot of money up front on inventory and things like that. And then after I would write a chapter, I would run it through, Chat, and just see if I did everything was really funky or anything like that, or my spelling was wrong, something like that.
Clean
So I
it up.
used that
Yeah.
as the editor, and it worked really well.
Yeah. And what does Dojo of the Mind mean to you then?
So the reason why I actually named it the Dojo of the Mind is because, in it, in the dojo, you're learning about different techniques, different whether it's whatever it might be, kata or the whole gambit. But there's also the internalizing of these processes. So the Dojo of the Mind came about as, your mind is yours. No one else is in control of your mind.
I hope.
So it's a school. Your life is a school,
Mm.
and you develop your own. Your mind can be your best friend or your worst enemy. So for me, it's like almost like a training school of the mind. Like, what are you going to do in your life to be? That's where the concept originally came from. At least the concept of the title of the book came from.
Mm.
What are you going to do in your life to train in your mind? Because that's if you're not controlling your mind, someone else is.
Yeah.
Whether that's media, whether that's
Exactly.
outside negative influences and things like that. So, I think it's really important that people realize that, listen, this may sound, really out there, but the entire universe exists in your mind,
Yeah.
because it's how you're interpreting it. You look at the world differently than I do. My wife looks at the world differently than I do, because we all have our own unique experiences. So, that's why I think it's really important that people kind of dial in on that, is that, if you're not controlling, if you're not controlling your thinking, and that may sound bizarre, but if you're not controlling about what you're taking in and how you're processing it, and you're just letting other things control, how you view the world or your opinions on things or anything, I think it's sad. So, and again, I'm no philosopher, no whatever, but that's where the concept of the book came from, is that your mind should be a training field for your entire life, and it's up to you to make the best of it.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. And I don't think again, it almost goes back to the whole doctors and professional thing again. I mean, there's nothing should shy people away of being their own philosophers. And I think people will be pretty surprised about how little thinking they do at times, and how much thinking is done for them. And pausing. It reminds me to, I think I may have talked about it before. Like, I read a book, Gosh, I wish I could remember the name of it now. This is one thing getting old. My memory, man. um,
I can relate, my friend.
there was a there was a psychiatrist who wrote a book, and he was a part of the therapists that were working with survivors of 9/11, families and friends of victims of 9/11. And gosh, I wish I remember the book. I think it was called. No, I'm going to butcher it. But point of it was he was getting at. He got into a little bit of trouble because he said something to the effect of psychology doesn't work, and oh, how dare you, whatever. But it was a caveat, right? You had to in full context. What he was trying to say was that any of these things, any modality, psychiatry, psychology, whatever, they won't work unless the person wants the therapy. The person
Absolutely.
has to come to, like the whole adage where lead a horse to water, but he has to drink or want to drink. Is that whole thing. Unless a person comes there recognizing, hey, I need some help here, or I need some tools to whatever. But if they come there like, yeah, you know, thinking there's going to be some magic thing, is nothing's going to happen. So,
Right.
and I think there's something to that too, like arcing back to what you were saying around, like there is a lot going on there, and who are you, the thought or the thinker? And
Yeah.
there's a lot of work that a person needs to do for themselves in this journey as well.
No, I agree. I mean, it's just like the physical side of it. You know, if
Yeah,
you're not working the mental side of it,
exactly.
it's going to atrophy.
Yeah. I had a question that I wrote down because I wanted to get into this because I knew you had about the books and stuff. So you talked about how martial arts helps with mental clarity and emotional balance. How has that shown up in your own life?
Oh, wow. Great question. Yeah. So, I mean, it goes back to, there are times when just from training,
Yeah,
and just from the discipline of having to train, one, it developed discipline. So, there, obviously we all have this. There are times when you don't want to do something. And the training, kind of edged into me that, you got to do what you got to do. And you need to persevere. I love that about Kyokushin, the whole concept of us, persevere, go through the tough times, things are going to be tough, but you got to work through it. And so that's had a major impact on me with the martial arts. And also goal setting,
mm,
so as you're going through the different belts, and I don't even, not even really the belts, but I mean, even if, I mean, that's part of it, obviously, but I mean, when you're trying to learn something new, a new technique or a new kata or whatever it might be, to be able to set a goal and then, don't stop until you accomplish it. And sometimes, I literally just had a conversation about this with one of my friends the other day, about the concept of 7 times down, 8 times up, which I think that's a great philosophy. And he was having some challenges with some stuff. And I said, listen, meaning you're falling down 7 times, getting up eight. That doesn't mean every time you get up, you have to do the same thing.
mm-hmm.
You get up, adjust. If what you're doing isn't working, adjust. And that's one of the things that the martial arts taught me, and I try to apply it all the time in my life is that, if something isn't working, if I'm banging my head against the wall and the wall's not moving, well, you know what? Don't bang your head against the wall. Try something different. You know what I mean? So, I think that's really, for me, that's been really important in my life is that sometimes, and people may see it as, quitting. It's not quitting. It's readjusting. It's realigning yourself. You still want to get to the same goal, but maybe the road's going to change a little bit. Take a different road. And if it doesn't fail, fall down, get back up and try again. As long as you get back up again, you're not failing. I tell this to people at work all the time. I have some people, they're so afraid of failing.
Yeah,
I'm like, it's okay to fail. If you don't fail, if you learn something from it, if you fail and you learn nothing from it and you do it 5 times, I mean, the whole concept of insanity is, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting something different to come out of it. So that's the thing with the martial arts that taught me is that, I know I'm going to fail. Like this whole process with writing the books and I failed 100 times on things that I was trying to accomplish. And it would frustrate the hell out of me. And I would think to myself, why am I even doing this? And I get ticked off for the night. And then I get up in the morning and be like, okay, that's not working. Let me try something different. And, listen, even if the books don't sell at all, I was telling my wife this not that long ago. Even if the books don't sell at all, you know what I'm happy about? one, I worked through the process. I learned about it, right? And I created something that, and again, I'm no Shakespeare. I'm not saying I'm Shakespeare, but I created something out of nothing. And even if no one bought a book, I'm still happy with that.
Mhm.
I'm happy that, you know what, I took on a challenge. I had no idea what I was doing. So I had to do tons of research. I mean, I have spent hours, I mean, countless hours working on all these projects and stuff like that. And it for me, it's growing. And I think that's important for people to realize. If you fail, you only fail if you stay down and you don't keep trying. If you learn something from failure, you're not failing. That would be my message.
And I think that's great. I really do. I like that what you're saying about the failing too. But I talk about this in my own job, in my work with folks. I'm like, failing's your friend. You're going to learn so much. I even saw there was a study I think came out about. Remember, they don't use them anymore. There used to be these walkers that they use for kids learning how to walk. They put the babies in these walkers.
Oh yeah.
They're off the
Oh yeah.
market now, and the major reason they're off the market is because there was terrible accidents, like kids would fall down stairs and stuff like that, unsupervised. But one of the other things that came out of them, it was really really interesting. It was that they learned that adults that were a product of learning to walk that way lacked in gross motor skills, mind body connection. They
Wow.
had different density and bone structure and stuff. And who knew that we need to learn how to fall? So
Right.
when kids are, it's not just about protecting kids. Like when kids are learning how to walk, it's not just so much about learning how to walk. They're as much as learning about how to fall correctly. They know how to start learning how to connect, their body to their spatial awareness and stuff. They're making all these neural connections are happening. So there's so much stuff going on underneath in those, those failure episodes that actually they're learning even not even consciously, but their body's
Yeah.
constantly learning and learning and learning. I always thought that was really interesting, like because again, this goes back to what we were talking about earlier, like in different societies now where things are a little softer. There was a good idea of like, oh, like kids are learning how to walk. Let's help them learn quicker, and we'll take away all the falling and stuff. Meanwhile, we're doing detrimental damage to them
Yeah.
by stripping away the thing that's one of the most important things is failure.
Yeah. No, I mean, really, you learn more from failure if you take it as a, listen, no one likes to fail. I mean,
No,
but
it
if
sucks.
you take, yeah, it sucks.
Yeah,
If you take it as a, if you take it as a positive, you know what, you could get ticked off, get whatever you want. But as long as you learn something from it, you could like, if you win all the time, then it's harder to deal, my opinion.
yeah,
If you got up every day and everything you did in your life you were successful at, you wouldn't know adversity, and at least in that
exactly,
realm of life. And then when something comes out of left field, you wouldn't know how to deal with it
exactly. Yeah.
or to shift to it.
So I guess yeah. So on that, like now that you've worked in these kind of leadership roles now for like I guess like 30 plus years now,
Yeah.
um, like martial arts principles, the discipline, perseverance, humility, I suppose too. Has
Yeah.
has that like affected and shaped your leadership?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It's really interesting. So, when I look at people I'm working with, um, I actually, I take it. This is probably going to sound corny, but I take it as a privilege to be able to be in a position where I could lead people. I
Mm,
mean, I don't take it for granted. And one of the things that the martial arts has taught me is over the years, and in just my experience, and it's probably a combination of things, probably my personality, how I'm kind of wired. But I think that it's really it's really important that to take people where they are. Take them, well, in other words, you can't force someone to be something they're not.
yeah.
So, I see so many people, and I've worked with so many managers over the years where, they expect people to be exactly what they want them to be. And yes, I understand that there are procedures and processes and all the things that have to be done correctly, but not everyone learns at the same timeline. Not everyone, is going to do things exactly as you want them to do. The bottom line is, what's the outcome? Is the job being done? Is it being done properly? And things like that. So, you know, um, for me, the journey has been a combination of things. I take a lot from the martial arts, kind of helped me, and again, I was managing before I was doing martial arts.
Mm.
The funny thing is, once I started martial arts, I got a little softer as a manager.
Really?
I don't mean softer in terms of letting people let things go, but a little softer in my approach. Prior to that, I was probably a little harder,
Mm.
probably, a little more sharp. And then once I started getting involved in martial arts, and and I had to learn things, and it kind of humbled me
Mm.
because, I was failing a lot in the martial arts, and I began to realize that, you don't have to, I'm not saying I was a dick, but you don't have to be you don't have to be a hard person to help people develop, you know. And I think that's really important. And I think that's missing in a lot of cultures, a lot of business cultures today,
Mm.
is that people are pretty hard on people. And, I tell you, more people leave because of bad management. They leave jobs because of a bad manager than the job itself.
Yeah, I definitely can relate to that as well. Um, do you have like daily like habits or anything that you like that you use or utilize in your own life?
Yeah. So, now, like I try to walk every day, and now it's great
Yeah.
because we have the puppy. So now I get out every morning. I'm working with the puppy. I don't want to use the word meditate. I try to meditate, but usually I try to before I do anything in the day, um, I have a little app that I use, and it's called Calm,
Oh
and it
yeah,
has
I'm
a whole,
familiar with that.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, I try to do that every morning. And then,
How does that?
you
Sorry,
know,
what is? I remember seeing ads and stuff for it. Like, is it like guided?
yeah, it's great. I mean, it's a really great, I think it's a great app. They have guided meditations, they have timed meditations, they have different, uh, they have speakers, like obviously taped speakers that come on and talk about different topics,
Oh,
and they
cool.
have different, yeah, I mean, I like it a lot. I mean, I
Need
think
them as
it's,
a sponsor.
yeah, hey, give me a sponsor. Give me a sponsorship. No, but I think it really is. I think it's great. And I think, and I use it, they have like breathing, you know,
Look at this.
oh, how's
Just
it
I'm
go?
gonna see if it clicks back on. I think I know it's. I have my own issues going on technically. Yeah, it's gonna. I know what's going on now. It's getting better. At least I'm
Yeah.
not having to stop the full recording. But anyway, sorry.
And then, typically if I can, and I'm not always great at this, but, I try to pray a little bit when I can. So those are kind of my routines.
Yeah, yeah. I have my own things. I won't go into all of them. I mean, this show's about you, not me. But one thing, actually, it was something though you said earlier on. But discipline's big for me. And it's funny because people think I'm folks who know me or people think they know me, so they think I'm very kind of carefree and whatever. I actually lead a really disciplined life, but I find freedom in discipline. Like I love structure. I get a lot of freedom knowing,
Yeah.
like I'm able to breathe knowing that I have that. And I remember Jocko Willing, the Navy SEAL dude, talking about that. About
Right there, brother.
there you go. Yeah. Okay. I love Jocko. And yeah, I remember Jocko was talking about that, like how he finds freedom in discipline. I was like, oh, yes, yes, I totally get. Like,
I agree with that.
yeah,
Discipline dissipates chaos.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah,
It really does. And if
um,
you have a set routine, it helps.
yeah, and I've always, I'm Christian. Um, I'm a pretty devout Catholic. I'm almost Orthodox. And actually on that, there's something I picked up from Orthodoxy. I do something called the Jesus prayer, and
Love it.
pardon me.
Love it.
Oh, are you familiar with it?
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
So I do 100 Jesus prayers a day, and I would do them in the sauna. And so inhaling, Lord Jesus Christ, Son of
Oh,
God,
wow.
exhaling, have mercy on me, a sinner, and that's my meditation, a
Yeah.
100 times, and that generally takes me about 18 minutes in the sauna.
Wow.
And
That's awesome.
so yeah, between my discipline and that's my daily meditation. That's a very
Eh,
very.
eh, maybe I'll ask you offline.
No, go
I can
for
ask.
it. I don't mind.
Are you because you have a beautiful cross there, and is that a miraculous medal?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Are you you were saying Orthodox? Are you considering going to Orthodoxy?
I
I didn't mean to go into it,
no,
but
no,
go
I
on.
don't mind at all. It's
Because I've been down that journey, my friend.
yeah, yeah. Like I was born, raised Irish Catholic. I was an altar boy as a kid, Latin masses, everything, and
Yeah.
then of course through my teenage years and my 20s, I got out of it, rejected religion as a whole. Then I went down a path of even studying. I went studied. I did it even did almost like a comparative analysis of Western monolithic religion and esoteric studies in Eastern thought and philosophy,
Oh,
like
wow.
Buddhism and
Yeah,
Taoism and
yeah.
all those types of things.
Oh
And
my
then,
gosh, we sound like we've been driving in the same car here.
yeah. So then
Yeah.
it came almost like as I got older, almost back around full circle again. To I became very, very. And I had some pretty profound things happen to me that I was like, there's no some pretty crazy things that brought me back. And yeah, so I became very, very back to my roots, devoutly Catholic, and but I started exploring then more around Orthodoxy, and there are certain things. Will I say will I become I tell joke to people I'm the Orthodox Catholic, because
Yeah.
there are things like Jesus prayer, for example,
Yeah.
and things of that nature. But then there's yeah, it'd be that we could go off in another half
Yeah.
hour
You
more
know,
just
yeah,
me
that's,
talking about
yeah.
my juxtaposition between
Oh, I
these.
didn't mean no, yeah, no, I didn't mean to, yeah, I didn't mean to get too personal there,
No,
but it's just interesting.
it's not that. It's not that. It's just it's such a heavy, deep
It is.
conversation.
It is.
And I like in these when I do podcasts with folks, I want to make it about you and the thing, and I don't want to like because I could sit here literally go off about 45 minutes around
Oh,
like
I get that. You know the funny thing, and I don't mean, and this is not disrespectful to anyone in the world. I mean this sincerely. I really mean this sincerely. So many, in my opinion, again, I could be wrong. In my opinion, like that's beautiful that you're looking into it. And I don't mean orthodoxy specifically, but that you, and even if you are, that's wonderful. What I'm saying is, so many people, I think, just they never question. You know what I mean? And I think it's really
someday they
important.
will.
Well, no, no, I agree. No, what I'm saying is, but what, yeah, no, what I mean is, but what happens is, I think they never question why,
Yeah,
and I think you're not really going to understand your faith unless you do.
yeah, yeah, 100%. Yeah, yeah.
So I'd love to
So
talk to you about that.
are you Orthodox?
Yeah, right now I am. Yeah, yeah. I was
Oh, okay.
I was born and raised Irish Catholic. Went through the whole process, and then I had some different things happen. And then probably about, and I have to say, I'm not a very good one. I'm not a very good Orthodox. I have to try a lot harder. I'm not. I'm really not.
I don't think there's any
Um,
good anymore, but and
no, but well, I'm just not really a good Orthodox Christian. But I mean, I try to be. I mean, I'm at least not, maybe not in practice. I don't want to go into the whole thing, but
no, no. Are you
that
Greek Orthodox or
Russian,
Russian? Yeah.
Russian Orthodox. So I think I just found it very interesting. I could tell you, man, I could give you a list of books if you want to read. It's just fascinating
Oh,
stuff.
or I probably already have. Like
Okay, yeah,
I'm
yeah,
pretty deep.
yeah. It's interesting. It's an interest. It's really really interesting. I mean, I think it's you know obviously anytime you get people involved in stuff, humans are humans, and there's going to be issues.
Oh yeah,
But
yeah. And frankly, and even right now, like talking to you, one of the reasons I'm comfortable talking because I assumed because I saw over your head too, our
yeah,
Savior, and so I figured I'm comfortable saying it. But I generally stay away talking with folks. I try to at least the cliche religion, politics, those things
right.
because they become such burner things, and people. We all like it are very close to our our beliefs and stuff, and I try not to, but yeah, it's yeah. So yeah, when I see folks that are definitely with it, I don't mind, and yeah, I'm and to your point, Yeah, I'm definitely no great Christian I mean I'm definitely weekly. I was there today. I was there twice this week. I'm at service or liturgy all the time, and I try to do what I can. But yeah, as I started with the meditation, Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me. I'm a sinner. Like I am a sinner and I need help. So anyway, yeah,
We all do, you know.
yeah. Um, so again, like, because I did have some actual, I should get to. I always write down things, but here's the funny thing: I never use them. I never because the conversations just kind of go on. But
Yeah.
I did want to, and actually something you already answered because I wanted to know about because you were talking about the weightlifting and stuff and how did that play in it. So I'm glad you actually talked about that. But I want to know what advice would you give someone who wants to turn how can I say this? Because I don't want to write it how wrote it here. I guess what I'm trying to say is how people who we all come up with different things in our lives, whether someone was bullied or there's other things. How do you turn that pain into a purpose?
Wow, that's a great question. That's a really, really good question. If you let the pain consume you, um, it 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 serves no purpose, right? So pain is often, if you look at, Joe Rogan says this. I listen to Joe Rogan a lot, and he said one time in a podcast that some of the best people he knows had the most messed up childhoods.
100%. I would say the same as well.
So would I.
Yeah.
I mean, so would I. Some of the most interesting good people I've ever met in my life
Yeah.
had really, really tough lives.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I'm not, and again, not to say I'm a special person that I came a really messed up background. And I think it does. There's something about that. So sorry to interject, but yeah, I agree with that.
No, no, no. That's great. I mean, not great that you had a rough childhood, but great that I mean that. Here's the thing. I mean, um, if you let it consume you, and you see you see this. At least I see this. This is how I view things. There are so many angry people in the world today. It's remarkable. When we were growing up, I mean, and again, obviously there's more media coverage. There are cameras everywhere. Everyone's walking around with a camera. So things that probably were going on back then
100%.
might have been happening, but I think the level of intensity of just the anger that's out there today is because they may take things that are happening to them and create that into hatred, right?
Hmm.
And create that something that's negative. And you know what? If you do that, then it's beating you.
Yeah.
So if something's really hard happened or has happened to you and things like that, if you can create that into a positive purpose, whether it's helping yourself, helping someone else, or just even mitigating the impact that it's having on your daily life, it's a purpose to try to overcome what's happened to you,
Yeah.
and that's a win in itself.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. All right. Legacy questions.
Oh boy.
What's the most important lesson martial arts has taught you outside of the dojo?
Um, wow. Actually, fear of failure, if you allow it to control you, will cripple you.
Yeah, that's awesome. True. Yeah, I love it. Was there ever a time you almost quit martial arts? And what stopped you or pulled you back?
Well, a couple of times when I was running those stairs, yeah. um, yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean, from time to time, I think it's just human nature. Life gets in the way. I can remember one time, I had a couple of injuries back to back.
Yeah.
Um, and what happened was one of my managers at the time, and this is a while ago, and he kind of pulled me to the side one time and he said, "You need to make a decision," because it was impacting some of my work.
Yeah.
And he was
Yeah.
like, "You need to make a decision. Are you gonna continue with?" And he called it a hobby. It
Yeah.
was probably,
Yeah. I have it. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, or
I hate
or you
that
gonna,
word.
yeah, so do I. And I almost quit then. Um,
Yeah, of course.
and then just yeah, here from time to time, but um, nothing really seriously. And again, listen, I was never a spectacular martial artist. You know what I mean? I mean, like, and we've talked about this offline. I mean, the people that you've had on your show are, I can't tell you how many times I watched your chats with Shihan Tom Callahan, with Shihan Judd Reed. You know, and I watch them. You know, you just had a great one with Sensei Rick Horton Sensei. Um, you know, so never a spectacular martial artist, but that, you know, to me, that wasn't the point. You know, to me, it was
Yeah.
I'd get to the dojo. Could I be a little bit better today than I was the day before? That was it.
Uh, I relate. I'm nothing special either. Like I really, really not. And I've been around some, even not just even on the show, but like just in life with some phenomenal, phenomenal martial artists. And I don't think it's. There's so much that you can take away from martial arts. I don't think you need to be like the top of the pedigree and on the sports side of it or whatever the case may be. I don't think it's I don't think that's what quantifies like a great martial artist. I have met some fantastic folks over the years that may not technically be the best, but they're pretty darn phenomenal.
Yeah.
How has your training influenced your worldview, or that of relationships, even I suppose?
That's interesting. I never thought about that. That's really interesting. Damn, that's a good question. Um, I'll be honest. I don't know if it has. My worldview. You mean like politically, or just kind of like a worldview?
I don't know. I think I'll tell you where I got that one from.
Really interesting.
Sosai used to talk about how.
Oh, if you put two people in a room.
Pardon me?
I was going to say, you put two leaders in a room, there would be no wars.
Well, what he said was if everybody did martial arts, there'd be no war, or something along
Oh
those
yeah.
lines.
Well, you know, that's interesting. You know, so maybe it's not a worldview, but you know, and maybe this isn't a worldview, but I mean, I talk to my wife about this all the time. I talked about sometimes people at work. You know, I see people doing things sometimes, you know, and they don't really understand. They don't understand violence.
Yeah, yeah. I've talked to my
Yeah,
friends
they
about
really
this.
don't.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, you know. I mean, I had a woman. You know, and I know it was a woman because she wound up driving past me, but you know, a couple of weeks ago, and she was just tailgating me like literally inches behind me. People don't understand today. You know, I mean, uh, and a worldview maybe be, you know, let other people alone. Leave people alone. You know, I mean, uh, they don't understand that sometimes actions have really bad consequences. You know,
Yeah.
and there are people who have they don't have a lot of self-control. So, and people don't understand. And here's the thing. I mean, a lot of people, including guys, everyone thinks they can fight,
Yes.
and they can't.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like if you put someone on the street, now listen, I grew up in Brooklyn. I knew some really, really, really tough dudes. I mean, some really, really good street fighters. But guess what? They practiced at street fighting. They were really good at it, right?
Hmm.
But but my thing is, you know, people take these chances with things and other people, and you don't know who they are. And maybe that's my worldview is that, you know, like, you know, obviously social so much better, but obviously, but you know, just kind of don't be a jerk.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. But that's true. But you see, you struggle with that question, but that's exactly what I was looking for. And that's, yeah, that's actually really, really good. Um, when it's all said and done, what's the legacy that you want left behind when people think of Gene Burke?
Uh, Boy, that's a good legacy questions here. I would say, you know, just someone who tried to help where I could. You know, I hope that I'm kind. Um, you know, but I'm also someone who's dependable. And you know, I think about my grandkids a lot, like what my legacy would be. My grandkids, just that they'd be proud of me.
That's awesome. Okay. Last legacy question. If you could whisper something into your white belt self ear, what would it be?
Wow. Besides, it's going to hurt. um, I would say enjoy the process more.
Mm,
You know, I put a lot of pressure on myself. Uh, you know, and I think that's a message for everybody. I think, you know, we often talk to ourselves much harsher than we'll talk to someone else, especially our friends, you know, and I think that's one of the things is be kind of kind to yourself and goes back to, you know, you're going to fail. And if you fail, it's not the end of the world, and if you learn something from it, you're not failing. So I think that would be it, is just kind of enjoy the journey more
I love that.
and just kind of go with the flow.
Yeah, I love that because we can be our own worst enemies. I'm guilty of it too. I don't think there's anybody who talks harsher to me than me.
Oh, I agree with that. I have, let me tell you, my friend, I have a nasty conversation every day with myself,
Yeah,
and I'm constantly fighting it.
yeah.
So,
No, I totally relate to that too. All right. As we wrap up, any parting words or anything you want to share with folks?
well, first, I really, really, truly, and I mean this, and we talked a little bit offline about this. I really appreciate the opportunity of being a guest on your show. I really do. It means a lot to me. It really does.
I
And
appreciate that, but honestly, it's
no, I'm not kidding you. I'm not done. Wait, wait, whoa, 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 wait till after this. I'm calling my kids, my wife. I mean, trust me, everyone I know is gonna know. But beyond that, I would just say, my thing would be, and we just kind of like touched on it a little bit. My parting message to everyone is, listen, life is tough. Be kind to other people. You never know what they're dealing with. Everyone's struggling with something that you don't know.
yep.
And be kind to yourself.
Yeah.
Life is hard. You don't have to make it harder than it needs to be.
100%. I love it. If people want to know more about you or reach out to you or pick your brain more or anything, where can they find you?
So I actually have a website. So thank you. So it's actually www.thirdmonkeypro.com. And some of my books are there, and my emails there and things like that. If they want to reach out, that's probably the best way to get a hold of me.
I would. Sorry, I can't let you go without this one then, because I wanted to ask you. I totally forgot of it. Where did that come from?
Third Monkey Pro?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I saw a cartoon one time, and it really struck me. And it was the concept of, you're the third monkey on the ramp to Noah's Ark, and it's starting to rain. So what are you gonna do? You gotta figure something out. You
Yeah.
gotta, whether it's you're fighting the other monkey, or you're figuring out another way to get on the ark, whatever it is. But you're that third monkey. You better figure something out pretty fast.
I love it. All right. All right, folks. You know where to find Gene. Gene, thank you so much, man. I really appreciate this. Again, apologies for technical hiccups again, folks. And we had some even before even coming on here that made it challenging, but I'm glad we did. And yeah, it's been an absolute honor, man. I really, really appreciate it.
Been my honor, my friend. Thank you so much.
All right.
All right.